quarantine has been taking us in respect to this important question. Let's begin maybe if everyone could just introduce themselves, your work, and what you're most excited about today. And we could start with Miki.
Oh, hello. I am in beautiful Santa Barbara. Wow. My son is out there frolicking in the water, and it's been so fun to have the first real hang with friends that we haven't seen in months and months because everyone's been social distancing. So after a lot of quarantining, everyone's like trepidatiously spending time together, social distance. But it's really a good step in the right direction for humankind. So I am a social entrepreneur, and I'm just really passionate about elevating the human experience while also, saving Mama Earth and supporting her and making sure that, we're not just consuming over and over again. So what I focus specifically on is inventing products that eliminate single use and really look at creating products that can be used over and over again, specifically in the taboo category. So we think about one of my first businesses was the restaurant business, and really looking at the first gluten-free farm to table local seasonal organic pizza concept in New York City. This was almost 17 years ago, and started my first business. And then I started Things, which is the period-proof underwear brand, which is really looking at eliminating all the single-use tampons and pads that take 500 to 800 years sometimes to break down in a landfill, and invented a beautiful pair of underwear that lasts for years and that you can just bleed straight into. And then most recently, I started a company called Tushy, which is really looking at disrupting the toilet paper category and the toilet category. Right now, over 15 million trees are getting cleaned. I mean, the analogy I give is imagine taking dry paper and jumping in your shower and not turning the water on and just using dry toilet paper to wipe down your dirtiest bits. I mean, people will call you crazy, right? So I've invented just a new way of going to the bathroom for Americans. I mean, it's not new globally, it's a bidet, but we've developed the best in class bidet attachment in this country that both washes your butt clean, helps save Mama Earth, and we've also helped over 60,000 families gain access to clean toilets. A part of our proceeds goes to solving the global sanitation crisis, which is affecting billions of people globally. So very passionate about the work that you're doing, Stephen, and I'm really excited to see where Ecoversity and where all of this goes.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Miki. Let's take it to Charles.
Hey everybody. I'm a writer and well, I used to be a public speaker, but now I seem to be a speaker to computer screens. And my things I write and speak about are basically systems change, psychological change, spiritual change, narrative change, and really mythology change. So yeah, happy to be here. Happy to see you all.
Awesome. Rob, my brother.
All right. Hey, brother Stephen. Nice to see you.
I know. I feel like we were just together before all this.
Yeah, it's been about 3 months, I think. And you asked what we're all most excited about. At this moment, I have to say I'm most excited to be on this panel right now. Awesome group of people, and I'm smiling from ear to ear just seeing you all. Derrick, great to see you after a couple months in Costa Rica. And Charles, I just read your article, The Coronation, last week, and it was really one of the best perspectives the best perspective I've read over the last few months. So really glad to have read that and seen a lot of your work over the years. So nice to be on this panel with you. And Miki, I've got friends who wear your underwear and they love them. And Tushy is great as well. I've never actually used the Tushy, but I know about it. And so really nice to be on here with all of you. And as far as just a little introduction, I do environmental activism and sort of campaign stunts that are really designed to grab people's attention, grab media's attention, and get the conversation going about important environmental issues. And then also, I just do my best to live in a way that's environmentally responsible, socially just, and equal, and to live in a way where I'm not destroying the world that I live on, but instead I'm adding to people's quality of life.
Yes, well, you sure add to my quality of life. Derrick, take it.
Hey, what's up, brothers? Hey, back to you, Rob. Good to see you again. Good to see you, Steven. Yeah, my name's Derrick Broze. I'm originally based in Houston. I've been in Mexico the last couple of months, just out here doing a lot of the things that we're talking about in this call, looking for land, looking to build community out here, build a network of intentional communities. Of course, inspired by Steven and inspired by visits to Punta Mona. In my day-to-day life, I'm an activist, I'm a journalist, I'm an investigative journalist, an author, public speaker, doing a lot of the same work, I think, in different ways that we're all doing here, trying to talk about ways forward, particularly talking about localization and decentralization of the food production system and really all of the different systems that we're dealing with in our life. And I'm just excited to be here with so many other people who actually care and who are taking this event, this crisis, as an opportunity to help other people rethink the way that we're living our lives and not simply go back to normal, whatever that may have been. So yeah, thank you guys for having me.
We will never go back to normal. Thank goodness. So my first question, as you mentioned it, Rob, is in reference to Charles's Coronation, the essay. If anyone out there has not read The Coronation, it is a must read. It's unbelievable. Often in our minds, we have thoughts and ideas, and sometimes they're jumbled, and somehow Charles has this magical ability of just bringing them together and putting them into words so concisely. And you referred in The Coronation about this great global crossroads that you constantly, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that you constantly felt like you were approaching, several times, and right before you would get there, it would disappear like a mirage. And I can so deeply resonate with this. And I remember, I want to go back to several times. I remember the first time I went to Burning Man, or the first time, it was 2002, and I was at the Bioneers Conference in California. And Paul Hawken, I'm not sure if everybody knows, Paul Hawken gave this talk that was just so jolting. And I was just so inspired at the end of it. And I remember it ended, and I walked out into there's like a grassy area that you go in between the talks. And I looked around, and I just felt like where it's about to happen. Everything is about to happen. Everything we've been dreaming. Oh my God, everybody's ready. And then bam, it vanished like a mirage. And it's happened to me several times since then. And I'm just wondering if you all think that this coronavirus is the great crossroads that we've all been waiting for. Could it be this highly contagious disease that it's going to take to jolt humanity awake? So I don't know if that inspires anyone to answer. Anyone, thoughts?
All right, I guess.
Yeah, Charles, you go.
Yeah,
It
Charles
seems
first.
like someone has spotlighted my videos, so I'll say something about it. I don't think that, I wouldn't say that this is in and of itself it. This is the crossroads. This is the turning point. I think that it's more of the beginning of a process, an ordeal or an initiation that is going to take twists and turns that are hard to imagine right now. On its own, it's like it's set a process in motion that because on its own, like Stephen, you just said, this highly contagious disease. I mean, actually, when you start to go down these rabbit holes, most of what we're being told about coronavirus is questionable, both in terms of the virology, epidemiology, and the social and political response to it. There's a lot of questions there, but perception matters, and because everybody is responding to it as a tremendous crisis, it creates a crisis that is going to reverberate across many, many of our normal systems. For example, and this is something that's dear to your heart, Stephen, the food system. That's just one aspect of normal life that, I mean, I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball, but we could have food shortages. Just the ramifications of this are completely unpredictable. And at the very least, it has propelled us into unfamiliar territory. And in unfamiliar territory, choices that were invisible before become visible. Choices that were unconscious become conscious. And we become aware of our power. We become aware that we can, because we can make dramatic changes in a very short period of time if we are unified in a common story. The common story has been, as you said, this tremendously contagious, dangerous disease. Whether or not that is true, or to what extent that's true, we're being shown that when we all believe the same thing, left and right, up and down the political spectrum, from the elites to the people, when we all believe the same thing, we can in that unity, we can make tremendous changes. So it's showing us our power, which we could use for good or ill. It's not like coronavirus is our savior that's going to automatically deliver us to an eco-village food sovereign utopia or anything like that. We could continue down the road that we've been going down even faster than before. Like, that is an option that's available too. The old normal is over. The new normal is going to be a normal of permanent germ phobia, permanent social distancing, permanent quarantine, lockdown, surveillance, contact tracing, et cetera, the kind of totalitarian scenario? Or are we going to say, don't think we want to go there anymore? And let's look at all of the alternatives that have been waiting in the wings for so long. Alternative ways of living, alternative ways of healing, alternative ways of seeing the world, alternative ways of engaging change, even alternative ways of holding life and death. This is what I mean by the crossroads. Any possibility is open to us.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
I want to add. I'd like to chime in. Oh, so you go first.
Okay.
Whoever's
So I would say that millions of people are at a crossroad. I would say undoubtedly millions of people are going to change their lives because of this. And a lot of people are going to drastically change their lives. And we're seeing that. We're seeing so many people becoming, starting to question society, question their lives, and want to change things drastically. And one of the ways that they're doing that is you see people wanting to connect more with the land, live in community, grow their own food. So no doubt for millions of people, this is a crossroads. My thought is that overall coronavirus is largely just a reflection of our current state of society. I think that it has sort of become a media vacuum, and all it does is reflect the reality that we have in the world, and it just puts it into a new context or a new light. For the most part, nothing that we're seeing is actually very new. It's just that we're seeing it in a different way. And diseases are nothing new, but a disease of this manner in 2020 is new because now we have different ways of existing where we didn't in the past. So my thought is that generally this is just keeping us, we're going to see some very positive things come out of this, but we're actually also going to see a lot of very negative things magnified and multiplied out of this as well. And I would say my thought is that it's going to continue us as a society in the destructive direction that we're currently going. And that at the same time, millions of people will move further in the other direction, which is the direction of regeneration of the earth and humanity rather than destruction.
Beautiful, Rob. Beautiful. Is that you, Miki? Yeah.
Miki, kind of come
Okay,
in.
yeah,
Oh, there you go.
yeah, I'm here. Um, yeah, I mean, I think the word essential keeps coming up. You know, essential work, essential workers, what is essential to exist? I think more and more people are realizing that, wait, like the most essential things are what matters, and the ones that are the non-essentials don't, quite simply. And I think as a result, you know, stuff like the number of, you know, home farming kits and home gardening kits have shot up. You know, the different types of products that people are bringing to their homes are changing. People are opting for reusable versus replenishables, and that's a big positive change. Even if it's a bit of a inconvenience for people sometimes to, you know, have to wash a rag instead of having to just use a paper towel, but they know that they're going to have that for longer, and it's going to last in the event of a pandemic. And so I think people are starting to really care about the type of people they have in their lives, the type of products they have in their lives, the type of experiences they have in their lives, and what they all mean. And I think that's a really positive thing. I think, you know, that yes, there's a lot of struggle in that change. I mean, growing pains always suck. It's always painful to change anything, especially society, like, you know, rooted. I think for our next generation, like this one, I think it'll be a really, really positive disruption in all of those ways, because they're learning. I mean, he's learning how to be a lot more, you know, he loves being in the garden. He loves bugs, you know, like being an urban person. I just did not, you know, was always like, I'm afraid of them, you know, but he just like picks them up and loves them. And I just think that what we focus on, you know, is going to be things that are essential, and that's a positive.
Steven, you're muted.
Yeah, go ahead, Derrick.
All right, yeah, well, I just wanted to add to the conversation. I tend to agree with pretty much everything that was already said as far as this, again, being hopefully for many people a motivating factor and getting us to think about, you know, if we were maybe not living the lives we want to live, or maybe we now with this facing COVID-19 and potentially facing illness or facing death or facing lockdown, or as some of the things like Charles talked about, the surveillance and some of those implications, just considering all those things, some folks I think are really considering and really reflecting on where they've been going with their lives, if they were maybe on the path that they really want to be. So this does present an awesome opportunity for reflection and redirection. And I want to say, as far as, you know, from the journalistic side of things, I've been watching this and paying attention to the civil liberties attorneys and the institutions that are fighting for privacy and rights, and seeing some of the really disturbing potential implications, as well as, I think Rob mentioned, the economic side of things. There are Americans right now who, because of they're out of work, they're, you know, barely making it and don't have much savings. They're, you know, they're really just crucial conditions that people are facing right now, not just in the United States, but around the world. So there's a lot to reflect on and a lot to think about as far as the limits of the current systems. And as I mentioned earlier, with my focus on localization and decentralization, since this crisis has begun in the last couple months, I can say for certain that I have seen an explosion in interest, exponential increase in interest from people all around the world who've reached out through email and social media and elsewhere, who are interested in what we're trying to build in Mexico, interested in what's going on in Punta Mona, interested in starting to take those steps. You know, they've heard about community garden, they've heard about permaculture, they heard about unplugging from the banking system, or building new systems and building, you know, the next stages of our world. But many of them have kind of just kept it in the back of their mind until now, faced with this situation. There's just a massive growth in that. So I'm seeing just a renewed interest in decentralized community organizations and more, I would say, less hierarchical forms of organizing and coming together and thinking about how we want to interact and relate to the land, and thinking about the 7 generations and beyond, thinking about the steps that we're taking today and how that's going to affect, either help or harm, the future generations. So I hope that everybody watching this really does take these conversations and this opportunity to rethink the path you've been on. And if there are some things you don't like about that path that you might want to readjust, then use this as that opportunity so we can all move together in a better direction, because there are some realities that we have to face.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Derrick. All right, I'm gonna go to my next question, and it is this. So the talk I just gave before this panel was about what I've been calling the global redesign and a physical restructuring to create land-based agriculture communities and massive land regeneration projects to usher in a whole new time. It's about creating replicable models, redesigning space 1,001 hectares at a time. This would need a great transition, a transition from whole food shopping, from renting apartments, a major decline in our use of fossil fuels. And I can't help but reflect on the fact that this virus, something so small that we can't even see, is having this macro global effect on the entire world. So even if we prepare the ideal eco-villages all around the world and physically the world is ready, there's something beyond the tangible, clearly an energetic shift that needs to happen globally. How can we help instigate this? What do you think next steps are for individuals that want to be ready to take this plunge into a new time? You're all such incredible thought leaders. Do you have any advice on practical next steps for the people listening to actually make the shift? Do you feel like humanity is ready for this great shift? And more importantly, are you?
Well, that was quite, okay, you go, Derek.
Yeah, I'll grab that if anybody else wants to first. I guess practical advice, the most practical thing I think we can do, I tend to come at the equation from both ways, both the internal, the spiritual, more personal struggle, as well as interfacing with the realities of the physical world. And right now we are dealing with the response to this crisis and to this pandemic. We're dealing with, as everybody's mentioned, social distancing, some of the potentials for our world to go back to normal, or to go to a new normal, as many people are calling it. There's a lot of people reflecting on whether or not they agree with these decisions, and like I said earlier, their own health. And there's a lot to consider right now. I think the best thing we can truly do, though, is to find ways to connect, and if for the moment it means digitally, but with in mind the long-term goal of face-to-face human interaction, is to start to connect to the people who are closest to you. And in some cases that might be very limited people, so using the internet can be powerful for that. But I continue to encourage people to connect with their neighbors. I mean, it sounds so simple and obvious, but I think it's something, no matter what part of the world you're in, that we can all strive to do, is to become more integrated and connected to our communities, to build those relationships that can lead to the decentralizing and unplugging and opting out of these centralized systems. And I think ultimately can lead to more freedom and to more equity for folks. So I would say that the most basic thing, of course, is it's a great opportunity to use this lockdown or this time away from your typical normal for self-reflection, for getting to know yourself on a deeper level. So I think journaling can be really helpful in that regard. And then on the other side of the equation, dealing with the external, the physical world, getting to know your neighbors. I've created a website called freedomcells.org, freedomcells.org, and people can join for free and put in their skills, permaculture, the things they want to learn. They can create local cells or groups and connect with people. They can search the map and find other people. And so since this crisis has begun, we've had just so many people joining from all around the world. We now have a map with almost every continent, with people who are forming groups and connecting with, again, the goal of connecting digitally to meet in the real world, to create these small groups of 7 to 8 to 9 people based on various studies about group dynamics and the size that are most effective. So we're trying to build small decentralized groups. And I think in regards to that, connecting to your neighbors and connecting with your own heart.
Yeah, I definitely agree about connecting with the people around us. I think one of the most powerful thing we can do is actually become dependent upon one another. This idea of money being our independence and our security, we've seen so many times where that independence and that security is just wiped out. But when your security comes from the relationships and the skills that are from the people around you, it's much harder to wipe that out due to a virus or due to a plunge in the stock market. So I would say definitely community. And for a lot of people, that's hard because they're quite disconnected with their community. So one thing, a simple recommendation I would make for people is WOOFing, which stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. So is that you don't have to do any of this on your own. We live in a time when there is an abundance of resources, there's an abundance of knowledge and skills. We don't have to figure out any of this on our own. So going and volunteering on organic farms, learning to live simply and sustainably can be done in that way. And then another website to check out is ic.org for intentional communities. Find a community. There's so many communities out there. So many people I meet say, I want to start a community, but they've never actually even lived in one. My recommendation is go join the ones that already exist. And again, not having to reinvent the wheel. As far as the second part of that question, and that is, am I ready for a whole new world? The truthful answer to that, honestly, is probably no. And I actually was thinking about that over the last few weeks. It's kind of an ironic time for me. I just finished this year of growing and foraging all my food, where I was living off the land, where I didn't need grocery stores, where I was, kind of in the perfect
I want
scenario
you to be
for
clear,
something
Rob,
like coronavirus.
100% of your own food, from your salt to your oils to your everything. I mean, I want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
Yeah, so I was in the perfect situation. Now, ironically, I landed in Europe a week before the lockdown. Now I'm here, locked down in France, dependent upon the grocery stores and the industrial food system. And it made me feel like, yeah, I need, like, when I went to the grocery store, I even felt this sense of like, I gotta be a hoarder, but I felt that. And the shortages that have existed, I am not in a place right now where I'm comfortably able to handle that. So the answer to that is, if I'm ready, actually no. And that's been one of the good lessons I've gotten from this. It's really gotten me motivated to make sure that I am ready.
Awesome. Charles,
I want to go and live with Rob when the next pandemic hits, so that we could make sure the food is a-okay. Or Steven too. I mean, I'll take both.
Yeah, it's a good combo for that.
That is so cool, Rob, that you that is awesome that you did did all of that. And thank you, Steven, for even sort of to explain like the oils and that requires so much time and energy. And that's, my hat is off to you. Yeah, I think for me, it's like what I'm excited about is like people, like, we live in a world where we've been taught from the moment we were born to follow orders, like like sit down, be quiet, don't talk out of turn. If you want to go to college, and shut up and listen. If you want to get a job, then shut up and listen. Like, your voice isn't really part of this equation. Like, we've just been taught for so long to just sort of like, this is the way it is. If you go down this path, you'll have a safe, good life. And I think that this pandemic has been a real permission slip to say, wait a minute, like, every single thing is an illusion. Time is an illusion. Money is an illusion. These borders are illusions. I mean, the fact that we march on these borders with uniforms, with these little things called passports, little books. People are like, I'm going to create a passport. We're going to call it, it's going to stamp. And all of it's just creation from people from like 100 years ago that we've now accepted as truth. We've all agreed globally that we're going to follow this system of time and this currency that's this piece of paper. Literally could be anything. And we're realizing that, wait a minute, like, if we don't have, like, all that goes away, like, what do we need? And that becomes the whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We need food, we need clothes, we need shelter, we need community, we need love, like, and it goes from there. And I think that, all of the other things that feel like, the white picket fence, the house, all the things that we're taught that this is the way it is, will be rejiggered in our minds. And I think, it's like what Yoko and John Lennon said, the war is over if you want it. Like, we have to want to believe that we can make those shifts, that we have to want to believe that that we have agency over our lives. And we often most people feel like, I have to put on this mask of societal mask of how I should exist and how I should be and follow orders in this way. And people are popping like Adderall and antidepressants and all this shit because they're just not living their authentic lives. And I think that this experience is really like disrupting the notion of like that any of this is real. So I'm really excited about what that permission slip gives. And yeah, maybe it's intentional communities, maybe it's joining different groups, maybe it's going with your friends and buying a little plot of land with a group of friends and then starting to learn slowly on the land. Like you don't necessarily have to, everyone has to become the creator of something, but you can, I'm looking at land with some friends right now upstate just to see like, we might get a Sprinter van too, what I mean? Like as a, like jump in, we're off, no, but like it's a very real disruption in the way we believe things to be. And I think that permission slip is the biggest shift that we can offer somebody. It's so we're just in our own way. So it's good to be able to feel like, wait, we can get out of the system if we want to. I'm given permission to do that.
Beautiful. Awesome. All right. Alexa, you have a question?
Yeah, I'll jump in for another question. The next question, Miki, you just released a book called Disruptor. Inside you talk about your journey to where you are today and the challenges and the 13 disrupting shifts we can make in our life. You speak a lot about the plight of female leadership. In the current COVID-19 conversation, many people are talking about terms like femininity and masculinity and the roles of females and males. I was curious about this panel, how people felt about feminine leadership or femininity and masculinity and what roles they play, or what do these terms even mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're all realizing that, we're kind of like walking hypocrites, in sort of the future is female concept. I think is literally doing exactly that which we're fighting against, which is oppression from other genders or oppression from other groups. And so I think it's really about like, the future is human, the future is feminine. It's a combination of feminine and masculine together. And I think all human beings, both men and women, have a level of feminine and masculine within us. We all, anyone conscious really gets that distinct, that distinction between being female and being feminine, or being a woman and being feminine. I mean, I think the whole point is like this patriarchal preconditioning. Men want to be liberated too and want to be able to emote. I mean, we live in a world where it's actually more acceptable for men to be violent than it is for men to be emotional. And that is a truth right now, unfortunately. And, that whole whiplash for women is you're too nice, you're too strong, you're too thin, you're too fat, you're too voluptuous, it's like your ass is too big, your ass is too small. It's like, there's all of that is just, I think, going by the wayside now. And I think, as we're coming out of, just the way things were, women were just one generation ago, women were still housewives. And so I think we're going in the right direction, towards, women having a voice. But I also don't believe in outrage. I don't believe in women marching on Washington, because all it does is create more separation. I believe in connection, and I believe that we're women birth men. I have a son, and so it's like we don't need to other anybody in order to get a seat at the table. And I think there is something to be said about that polarity as well between the feminine and masculine. I think it's nice to see a balance in the system. If everyone's the same, then it's like boring. And if we want to have the feminine, the masculine come together at different times, I think that's again, it's whatever we want. Like it's whatever we choose to accept is the way it should be.
Love that. Thanks, Miki. Anybody else want to say that? We also have one question from the chat, Stephen, too.
Yeah, I see that, but let's see if anybody wants to respond to that, because it's
great.
Yeah, I mean, in my personal household, it's such, even what we were talking about, Andrea and I's course, embodying your purpose, redesigning your life inside and out, where I'm so out and masculine and doing, and also just, being with Andrea is so, bringing that feminine to my reality, and it's just such a important question right now. Even thinking how we got to this point, how masculinity has driven us, the patriarchy has driven us to this disgusting state,
It came from the Neolithic times. I mean, during the Neolithic times when land got divided and the farming people started to become more sedentary, like that's when the whole scarcity mindset began. This is my land, and I'm going to, marry a virgin so our child can basically tend to our land and that's when sort of that, before that, hunter and gatherers during the Paleolithic times, people were just getting what they needed. And then shared the rest, and nothing belonged to anyone. It all belonged to everyone. And only during the sedentary times when farming practices began did this whole patriarchal system form at all. And that's all in my book too. Just sort of how fascinating it is to see that just when you decide to become sedentary, that creates this potential scarcity mindset. And we can change that, and we can be, as more and more people are becoming nomadic, more and more sharing economies, building the Airbnbs of the world, and the woofing, and all of these different intentional communities are coming. That's all.
Oh, we lost Miki. We need more feminine here in this panel. Hey, Charles, do you have any thoughts on all that?
I mean, I could go there.
We also have another question, Charles, too, if you want to go in a different direction.
I'd love to hear from Charles, because I actually got to experience a most peculiar men's circle where I was out in the corner with Charles observing this funny men's circle. I'm just curious with your take on that question.
Yeah, I remember that. I would just be very brief and say that we don't really know what masculinity is outside of patriarchy. We know what it is like in patriarchy. So a lot of men reject that and say, well, I don't want that anymore. And the danger then is to reject masculinity altogether, or reject even the binary of masculine, feminine altogether, yin, yang, that whole way of organizing the universe, which is not the only way to organize the universe and to make sense of things, but it is a very potent way to do it, and not to be lightly discarded. Anyway, I could say a lot more, but I'd rather either go back to answer the second question or to answer whatever new question.
Yeah,
let's go back to the second.
Go back to the second question. Somebody in our little chat was wanting to hear from you.
Yeah. So the first part of it was next steps. I think that is unique to each person, and I hesitate to offer a formula, but it brought to mind something I heard David Icke say. Not that I agree with David Icke on his meta-analysis of why the world is the way it is, but anyway, he said something like, when you know the destination, then you know what the next step is. Referring to the totalitarian police state, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we can apply that to our own next steps also. When we know the destination and embrace that, then the next step that is unique to each of us becomes apparent. So the destination being, in a word, reunion. Reunion with community, reunion with nature, the reconstruction and regeneration of our full set of relationships to other beings. And also it could be reunion with extended family too. And that brings up a lot of difficulties. Do you relocate to somewhere where there's this utopian community? Do I move to Costa Rica?
Yeah.
But what about my family? What about my brother? What about my nieces and nephews? What about all of the connections that I have here? So this is not an easy question to answer. But when I am in touch with the destination, even if I can't fully put it into words, but having experienced it, experienced the outreach of the future into the present at various moments of my life that I can recognize as, aha, this is showing me my destination. And even to relate to that as a being, then even if I don't know how to get to that utopia, and even if I can't resolve mentally these contradictions between, family and existing relationships and new relationships and all that, still I can recognize the next step because I have a compass to guide me there. So that's, and then, am I ready for that? Yeah, I mean, I am and I'm not. And I am surprisingly ready to not travel so much. I am so happy to have an excuse to turn down all of the wonderful invitations that I was getting to go to beautiful places with beautiful people and participate in things I believed in to the detriment of my health and family life. And I'll just also just, I want to pick up a little bit on what Miki was saying about kind of the breakdown in reality, the habits of following the rules that for many people, as the dysfunction and cluelessness of the ruling powers that make the rules for us to follow, the explicit authorities, and also the worldviews and the ideologies that operate behind the scenes, as these become, as their cluelessness and inappropriateness becomes obvious, it gives us a little nudge to begin questioning the rules and the reality and the values and the worldview that are behind those rules, and to explore the edges beyond what we thought was true, whether it is about how to live, about what we're ambitious for, all the way to how to be healthy, or what's real about the social constructed world. Like Miki mentioned, like borders. I mean, these are a fiction that has power and existence because of our agreements. Money, corporations, debt, all of these are nothing more than conversations and agreements that take on a life and a power of their own through the power that we invest in them. So we have the opportunity to withdraw our power from those, to see them as the fictions that they are, and maybe even to extend that, to consensus reality itself, and to let in the experiences that probably many people on this call have had that do not fit into reality as it had been narrated to us by our school teachers, by science, by medicine. This transition will not be complete, and the series of initiations will not end until we have incorporated all of the excluded and neglected and marginalized parts of reality, parts of ourselves, parts of the world population, and parts of nature, and to bring them back into the whole, into a mature humanity. That's what this coronation, this initiation into maturity and sovereignty is really all about. And that's why I think it's just the first stage of a much bigger process.
Damn, Charles.
Woo!
Oh, so good, man. Damn. I'm curious. I don't know if you have something like that. I'm just curious if you have any questions for each other. I mean, you're all such heroes of mine. I'm just curious. I reached out to Rob earlier today. I was like, Rob, do you have any questions for anyone?
We're asked the last one.
I have a question for anybody or everybody.
Go for it.
I'm just curious, as far as, we're discussing various solutions, and somewhat specifically, others a little bit more vague or broadly. But has this whole situation caused anybody in this panel, and I guess the audience as well, to rethink the potential, or I guess the efforts of using the political system to achieve change? I mean, if people believe that true change, I think lasting change, could come through the political system prior to this, I'm just curious if any of that has been shaken by, the global response to this, and thoughts around that.
I'll answer that first very quickly. No changes in thoughts there since this has started. I didn't really think that was the best method, and have not changed my thoughts there.
Heard.
This is so fun.
Charles, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, briefly, I wouldn't discount anything. I think that there are people who are drawn to political engagement and action on the political level, and who have the skill set and enthusiasm to do that. And a lot of people don't. So what I would question is a belief system that says that privileges that particular kind of activism over other kinds, that locates the nucleus of change in the political system. I think it's actually more of a lagging indicator, but that doesn't mean that action there isn't important too. It's just not more important than action.
Yeah, I want to clarify. It's almost 12:30 in the morning here in France, so I'm very tired. And I just want to, I like to be clear with things. I think that massive change can be made through politics. I just choose to use other forms of action and intend to continue to do so.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I love how you said it. There's certain people that have those skill sets and desire to do that, and Derrick, I appreciate, it's like in permaculture, we call it the guild. If we're really going to make change here, we need all kinds I appreciate so much the work you do. I appreciate your radicalness and just the way you confront the system in such a loud and incredible way. And I don't, and I'm also do things in a very loud way as well, but just very far from politics. I don't have that skill set. So so it hasn't changed at all. If anything, I mean, for me, the biggest change is like, we just all need to wake up and try and be the nicest we've ever been. And I think that is what's going to bring the most change. It's like every day, if individually we could just really, really work on being nicer, each and every one of us, the world's going to be so much better.
I also just want to add, like, when we define change, because I think politics plays a huge role in our cultural narrative. So if politics is always going to implement change, because it's always having effect on the way we see things. Like I notice, like, when certain things happen in politics, the way like internal circles change their conversation, it changes the way things happen. So I would say that it always impacts the way we converse. In terms of positive change, I think that's hard to define.
Yeah, so we're pretty much almost at time. Does anybody have any final thoughts? Or I just, again, want to say how much I thank each and every one of you for joining.
There was one last question from the audience.
Okay.
Derrick was asking, are there any thoughts around creating of alternative economies involving greater sharing and decision-making and ownership, in particular to racial inequalities or racial equity?
Well, I'll just say one thing, and that is that there already is an incredible amount of alternative economies in existence. So more of that needs to be created, but it's already existed for a very long time, and it's something that, millions of people are already living, and millions of people have lived since they were born, that they never entered the mainstream way of doing things to the extent that a lot of people have. So it absolutely exists. All of us, I would say, on this panel are both advocates of it and living it in some extent as well. And as far as racial equality, I would say that often the more that you're able to remove the centralized power, that being tied heavily into the monetary system, and bring things back to a more community-oriented level, then a lot of the time there's going to be a naturally more equal system in there, and racially equal system. Not that it's a given by any means. You can have racial inequality within small communities as well. But often I think those two things can be very well connected.
Can I offer something quick about that?
Go ahead.
I think that the fastest, most effective way to bring more racial equality or equity to this world would be through debt cancellation and the ending of the currently prevailing international debt regime, internationally and also within countries. Because the system right now basically, it basically enslaves vast portions of the world to debt service, sucking away their labor, their resources, their entire national wealth to service debts that are never repaid. And a lot of people individually live that way too, slaves to their debts, debt peons, as it's called. And because wealth is so unevenly distributed, and because that has a racial component as well, if you alter that debt regime, you're going to massively remedy the racial inequality along with the economic inequality. So it comes down to a question, and I don't know, I don't want to reduce racial equity to pure economics, but as far as like the most powerful solution that's available, and that's really coming up as the economy disintegrates and debts that never were payable become obviously, blatantly unpayable. And as we see that government can borrow infinite amounts of money when it really wants to, like we start to question, what can we afford that we used to think we couldn't afford? Anyway, I'm not going to continue on my soapbox. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Did you want to say one thing, Derrick?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to what both Rob and Charles said. For one, I also agree that there are the economies that are outside of these various systems, economies that you could say are more equitable in different ways. They do exist. You know, some call them the counter economy, the shadow economy, the informal economy. It's where most of the people, like for example, where I'm at here in Mexico, most of the people are opening up every day and opening up their markets and opening up their stands and selling their goods and their services because they have to do this to survive, and because they're mainly entrepreneurs, and these people are not reporting necessarily taxes and paying fees. Instead, that money's staying in their own pockets and in their own communities. And so there are ways that people are finding ways to get out of that systems. And as far as the equity, I think that it's up to each of us to build those, you know, to get out of that mainstream system, because Charles kind of touched on it. I mean, there's basically a banking cartel that runs the U.S. economy as well as most of, you know, all the world economies through the banking system, keeping people enslaved in debt. So the way I believe out of that, one of the ways is to exit those systems as much as possible and to support and build alternative economies to compete with them. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing.
Thank you, Derrick.
Yeah, I just look at what all of you are doing and your role and how different this panel is, and you know, in Ecoversity, since we started, actually at Envision this year, it came out, is we started saying all of it. Actually, our Ecoversity WhatsApp group, it's called All of It. And I think what we're all doing is needed. We need to start eco-villages. We need to blast open people's minds, Charles. Rob, we need to prove things are even possible that are so far beyond. Derrick, we need to keep questioning. Miki, we need to keep creating these incredibly radical businesses, you know? All of it. Absolutely all of it. Amazing.
Thank you all so much. Is there any closing statements before we move on to the panel? This is just such a pleasure.
You are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free.
Yeah.
And I love you all very much. All you on the panel. Wonderful to spend time with you, and everyone out there. Love you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.